Ginda's Games, haha! Ladies and gentlemen, Gin here, excited to bring you a new champion guide. Today, we have the great pleasure of discussing the mighty Lord Zed, first true enemy of the Power Rangers. What? What do you mean there's no Power Rangers MOBA? Ugh! Get on that, Saban. Fine, just 1D then, and we get to talk about Zed, the Master of Shadows. He's still evil and awesome, but with significantly fewer snakes. Let's learn how to Zed. Zed is an attack damage-based ninja assassin. He's extremely mobile and excels at taking out single targets before hopping back out of the fray like he was never there. He has very little in the way of crowd control, but couldn't care less since he blows them up before it matters. Like his ninja brethren, Zed uses energy as his resource instead of mana, and is equipped with fairly short cooldowns. This allows him to use all his spells at once as needed, or to remain in lanes for a very long time, but over long engagements he will quickly run out of energy if he isn't careful. Unlike his fellow ninja, he hates all of them, and will eagerly kill anyone who will not join his side. That's what they get for impeding progress and knowledge. Using his slick ninja tricks, Zed can dominate the mid lane, the top lane, and even the jungle. Zed's passive is Contempt for the Weak. Mr. Z ain't got time for no jibber-jabbering fools. If an enemy is below 50% health, Zed's next basic attack will deal additional magic damage equal to a percentage of the target's maximum health. This effect can only occur once every 10 seconds against the same target. Contempt for the Weak is fantastic, not just as part of your damage combo against enemy champions, but while last hitting as well. All that extra damage on your attacks makes farming creeps a breeze. And, since this is magic damage, it gives Zed just a little bit of leeway against people stacking armor against the rest of his physical damage heavy kit. The Shadow Master's Q is Razor Shuriken. With a flick of the wrist, Zed tosses out his blades in a line, dealing physical damage to the first enemy they hit, and 60% of that damage to each other enemy it passes through. It's a pretty straightforward skill, but one that will get a little more complicated as we add the rest of his kit. Razor Shuriken is fantastic for last hitting at range, harassing the enemy, and clearing waves, all on a short enough cooldown that it can pretty much be spammed at will. For all these reasons, take a point at level 1 and max it out first. Living Shadow may be a Shadow clone jutsu, but it's far better than anything that chump Naruto could produce. As the linchpin of his kit, Zed's W has a number of effects. Passively, it increases Zed's bonus attack damage by a percentage that goes up with its level. Early on, this doesn't do much, but late in the game, it helps Zed scale up like crazy with the items he buys. At max ranks, it gives an extra 25% AD. When activated, Zed's shadow dashes toward the cursor. Unlike most pets and clones in the game, this one stays put for the next 4 seconds, but for good reason. If you reactivate the ability, Zed will swap places with his shadow. While this may sound like just a complicated way to dash, just wait, there's more. Zed is a master of the shadows, and even his shade can kill you. Whenever he casts Q or E, Zed's shadow will mimic the ability. Razor Shuriken, for example, will have the shadow throw its own blades toward wherever your cursor is pointing, allowing you to hit much farther away. You can even hit with both, though the extra shuriken will deal less damage. But wait, there's more. If the target is struck twice by a mimicked ability, he regains some energy. It's not much, but in the thick of a fight, it'll let him get an extra ability off much quicker. 1 point of Living Shadow will let you do everything it needs to, and as we said, the passive scales best in the late game. Therefore, take a point early at level 2 or 3, and max it out last. With his E, the Dark Ninja does a Shadow Slash. He spins his blades to create a burst of shadow energy, dealing physical damage to all nearby enemies. His W, we mentioned before, has a fairly long cooldown, but Shadow Slash helps fix that. Every enemy hit with it reduces the cooldown of Living Shadow by 2 whole seconds. Speaking of Living Shadow though, Shadow Slash has extra effects when your shadow mimics it. If your shadow hits with a Shadow Slash, the enemy is slowed, making them that much easier to catch up to or hit with your other abilities. If you happen to hit with them with both slashes, they are slowed even more, but unfortunately they don't take extra damage. As his only source of crowd control, albeit a weak one, Shadow Slash is his second strongest spell. A great tool for wave clear and harass, take a point in it at level 2 or 3 and max it out second. However, if you're jungling, I recommend picking it up at level 1, as it's much easier to hit the entire camp with than your Q is. Now we reach the zenith of Zed's power, the end of his alphabet of destruction. Zed's ultimate is Death Mark. As with all energy-based champions, this one is free to cast. On activation, Zed becomes untargetable for most of a second and teleports to the target enemy champion. On arrival, he marks the target for death and spawns a shadow that lasts for 6 seconds at the location he cast the spell from. Just like with his W, you can reactivate the ability to swap places with it, and it will mimic your spells too. After 3 seconds, the Death Mark will trigger, dealing physical damage equal to your total attack damage, plus a percentage of all physical and magic damage dealt to the marked target while it was active. So, by itself, Death Mark only does about as much damage as a basic attack, but combine it with all your other abilities and it will deal tons of damage, letting you walk away and leave them to die a few moments later. After all, cool guys don't look at explosions. As the ultimate expression of Zed's assassin powers, take a point in this one every chance you can. Ignite is a fantastically powerful summoner spell for him. The more damage you can stack onto Zed, the better. Plus, the healing debuff mitigates many of the ways they can attempt to cancel you out. Flash is a good follow-up, adding yet more mobility to an already mobile champion. He'll be ridiculously difficult to catch, and, of course, if you're jungling, pick up Smite. Masteries are quite straightforward, going 21-9-0 for maximum damage. Be sure to pick up the Spell Weaving and Blade Weaving Masteries if you can, as those all stack together nicely with his kit. Also, maximum ranks in Executioner lines up perfectly with your passive. While this selection doesn't have all the cooldown reduction we could be getting, we do have other sources for that at our disposal. The defense tree is our secondary choice, as Zed is rather squishy if he does actually get caught, and every little bit helps there. The mobility in the utility tree could be nice, but as mobile as we already are, it's not entirely necessary. Runes are a bit more flexible. Choose between armor penetration and flat attack damage, marks, and quintessences. The former will be stronger in the late game when people start getting armor, while the latter is strong early to help you get the ball rolling. And then get flat armor or health per level seals, and flat magic resistance or cooldown reduction glyphs. These you can choose depending on what your opponents are playing. Being the attack damage caster type assassin that he is, there are a few statistics in particular that we want to be getting in our items for Zed, namely attack damage, armor penetration, and cooldown reduction. We'll be getting a few other things too, but we'll explain as we go. To start, grab either a longsword, a Doran's blade, or a Doran's shield. The Doran's options are for easy and difficult lanes respectively, but generally I find the longsword is the middle ground that you'll take in most cases. The longsword in fact builds into most of the items you want to get as Zed, so you'll be buying lots of swords. The Brutalizer is the AD caster's item of choice, granting every stat you could want all in one cheap, efficient package. Blade of the Ruined King is especially strong for one particular reason. Sure, he can use the lifesteal, and his attack speed scales rather well with it actually, but really it's the active ability that we want. An extra spell that does a huge percentage of the target's max health as damage that also slows? This works wonders with your ultimate. Anything that gives you an extra damage spell is fantastic. Heck, I'd take Deathfire Grasp on him if the ability power wasn't completely useless. Follow this up with Last Whisper for a strong core filled with damage and the ability to penetrate almost anyone's armor. Once you've got these three, you can start working on other fancy knickknacks. For boots, which you'll likely pick up somewhere along the way, get Mercury Treads as a safe default, Ionian Boots of Lucidity if you're snowballing really hard, or Mobility Boots if you're roaming a lot, especially as a jungler. Getting Ravenous Hydra adds not only the standard awesome wave clear and added split pushing power, it gives you another spell you can cast for your death mark. Your Brutalizer can be upgraded into either a Black Cleaver or Yomu's Ghost Blade. Though some of the stats on Yomu's may seem less than optimal, it's really powerful on Zed if you're split pushing, and much more so than Black Cleaver when dueling a single target. Black Cleaver, on the other hand, is stronger in team fights, especially if you have many AD allies. If the enemy is really afraid of you though, why not get both? With all that armor penetration, you'll be dealing effective true damage against almost anyone. Most champions benefit from at least one defensive item, and Zed is no exception. A Guardian Angel is always one of the strongest ways to keep you alive and kicking in the late game. Sunfire Cape and Randuin's Omen are great for when you dive into the middle of the enemy team to kill their carry, as is Banshee's Veil. It should help keep you from getting locked down while you dive the enemy team. While Banshee's Veil is preventative, Mercurial Scimitar will let you correct your mistakes when you get stunned, and even gets you a speed boost since you're melee. As a last anti-mage option, Maw of Malmortius has the bonus of giving you tons of extra damage, even as they try to take you down. Lastly, some fringe options for you to consider. If you're jungling, you of course start with Hunter's Machete, but the item of choice to build it up to is Spirit of the Elder Lizard. Bonus true damage over 3 seconds whenever you deal physical damage? Why, that sounds fantastic. Doesn't add to your ult, but it triggers off of all of your abilities. Speaking of Deathmark, sometimes your ult's going to get countered. Champions like Kale and items like Zhonya's Hourglass and Quicksilver Sash, if properly timed, can just ignore it, negating your biggest source of safe kill potential. To get around this, why not just build more damage? An Infinity Edge is the way to go. They blocked your ult? Oh well. Your other abilities and basic attacks deal massive damage regardless. It is rather expensive, so keep that in mind, but it's one of the highest attack damage items you can get. Finally, for a super weird option, how about Sword of the Divine? Activating it will give you 3 extra powerful, extra fast attacks, and your ult lets you hop right up to do it. The item is entirely useless while on cooldown, and the basic attack speed stats aren't all that great alone, but if you really like this as a style, why not give it a shot? Despite being a somewhat squishy assassin, Zed has a surprisingly safe laning phase. Razor Shuriken allows you to last hit and harass from afar, and Living Shadow is a great escape tool. Buying the Bilgewater Cutlass portion of your Blade of the Ruined King early will give you an extra spell and some decent lifesteal to keep you sustained throughout. Once you have all 3 of your basic abilities, you can start performing your basic harassment combo. You don't actually have to be near them to do it either. Toss out your Living Shadow, preferably on top of the enemy. That way you can immediately Shadow Slash them for the damage and slow. The slow from the Shadow Clone will then make it that much easier for you to hit them with both Razor Shurikens. Do this a few times and you'll be ready to close in for some early kills. Be wary of wasting your W, by the way. While it's down, you don't have much in the way of escapes beyond your ulti and flash, which have a much longer cooldown. The enemies often forget that shadows exist though, and you can use that to your advantage, escaping when you think they've knocked you into the tower, or catching back up when they push you away. Master the many jukes you can do with your shadows, and you too can do the things that Faker does. Zed has some huge power spikes when he first gets, and then when he levels up, his ultimate. Deathmark gives him not only a ton of extra damage, but the means to get away with it unscathed as well. Once you have it, always be looking for an opportunity to kill with it. Once you pick your target and reappear next to them, start blasting them with everything you've got, or at least hit them with what's necessary. Begin, if you can, with the Bilgewater Cutlass or Blade of the Ruined King if you've got it. The slow will help you hit them with your Shadow Slash, Razor Shuriken, and anything else you have to follow up. And don't forget about your passive. One single basic attack at the end of your combo can be enough to send them over the edge. But how do you know when to stop, you ask? Well, it can be a little difficult to see at times, but if the Deathmark triggering will deal enough damage to kill the target, a big swirling shuriken will appear above their head. Once that's there, and you're sure they don't have a heal or a shield to cancel it with, hit R again to hop back out. Being an assassin with little in the way of crowd control or defenses, Zed much prefers one-on-one fights to full-on team battles. Catch someone in the jungle? They're dead, son! Split pushing is a great way for Zed to spend his time. His Q and E are great for clearing waves, as is the combination of Blade of the Ruined King and Ravenous Hydra. They send someone to stop you? They're dead too! And if you can't kill them for whatever reason, Living Shadow provides an easy escape. Remember, by the way, that only the clone version of your Shadow Slash can slow. You want to hop away before hitting with that to make your escape that much easier. If you have to take part in team fights, your job is to kill the enemy carry, whoever it may be. Dive them with your full combo, and leave the fight before it gets too hairy. If you want afterwards, collapse back in as cleanup crew. Remember that your passive works once per target every 10 seconds, making it ideal for taking out all the remaining weaklings. Zed is a scary powerful assassin. Dive in and out of fights to wreck your foes and you'll lead your team to victory. So, thanks for watching everyone. If you've enjoyed this guide, please let me know by hitting the like button. Speak up in the comments below if you have advice or questions. We're all here to learn. Subscribe for future stuff like guides, gameplay, and general silliness. Follow me on Twitch for streams and Twitter and Facebook to see what else is going on. Till next time, I've been Gin, and you've been watching me talk about a video game. Now get out there and slaughter the weak.
Only the worthy will survive.
Emerge from the dark of phenomenon. I'm a master of stealth like Gene Parmesan. 80 casts to take your health. Move in the shadows, test your will to survive like I'm GLaDOS. Attack vector, I'm severing vital organs. Decapitate the sensei, make a ninja orphan. According to my sources, you're bluer than normal. You're cordially invited to prove that you're mortal in combat with me. Nightcrawler plus Wolverine. Die like your dad, human guillotine. I'm undercover, I'm shrewd, I'm living danger. I'm coming tougher than dude from Power Rangers.